It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Sure, we're going to the confidence we always got when we get to a game, try to get to doing what we doing best. Last time we played them, I know West did a really good job guarding the point guard, Chioza, because he's fast. That's not an easy job. I give him a lot of credit for that.
We're just trying to play as well as we can play and keep our head down and find out who's next. And I think our guys have done a really good job of that. It's not like we have this great margin for error that we can, we still have to play really well to win games. And fortunately for us, we have.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network from downtown Columbia. Good to have you with us as we roll into the weekend. The gang is all together. Your Sports Talk family, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes, and behind the bulletproof glass with a shiny new noggin, Brian Leonard. That is, he must have gone to your barber.
No.
Your barber does that kind of work?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, I think those barbers at the fort do that kind of work.
Yeah.
I was telling Brian, the barber looks like he pushed so hard on his razor, it might have given him a concussion.
No, man, he looks like he lost a fight with a lawnmower.
Oh. Well, you're not exactly winning any awards for
my hair is my hair is
either.
I have the most pristine hair on the Sports Talk family. Okay.
Well, I wouldn't be so. You can't see mine tonight because I'm donning a cap, and Pro is always donning something on top of the head.
What hair?
I have plenty. You don't see this coming out of the back right here?
You don't have much to share, pal.
Well, you were up at Clemson. Tigers get number 20 last night in dominating fashion, and they do so with one of their main players struggling with the flu. Mm-hmm. That's a great sign. You win at home. You take care of business. You beat a weak opponent the way that you should. The way things worked out last night with North Carolina beating Duke, Clemson stands alone in second place in the ACC behind Virginia. Things are looking great. Jerry Palms has them as a number 2 seed. Where? In Charlotte. Mm-hmm. I tell you, they keep winning. I think they'll end up in Charlotte because I think the NCAA will reward. Let's try that again. I think the NCAA will reward Clemson if they finish strongly here with a regional site, something close so their fans can get to their game, much like they did South Carolina last year in Greenville.
Unlike them getting to the game last night.
Now, that is true. That's a little puzzling about the fact there are about, 2,000 empty seats, according to the stated attendance?
Any excuse you want to give is a valid one. It's a 7 o'clock tip. It's a very uninspiring opponent. Your team is having a third best start in school history, and the building was kind of dead in the opening half. Mm-hmm. And, it's been great all year. This really was the first time, and I've said this to somebody walking on the way, and I said, I'd be curious to see what the crowd looks like tonight because it's the first midweek game that doesn't involve a rival inside the conference, and it was less than impressive.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is the players weren't affected by it. They took care of business, Pro. So Virginia's 12-0, Clemson's 9-3, Duke, Miami 7-4, North Carolina, Louisville 7-5. In Clemson's world in basketball, when you're in this stage of the season, you look at the ACC standings, and you've got Duke and North Carolina in your rearview mirror. That's rare, and it feels good.
Well, this is the kind of year that Clemson could, really make some hay in the tournament. You have to think about it because of all the games I've seen this year, especially down the stretch, it's the team that's most desperate that's winning, which tells you the margin for error for most teams is very difficult to point to because when you looked at Duke's personnel, even though very young, how did North Carolina just seem to get every key rebound against a front line that's bigger than they were? But they wanted it more. You could tell they were more desperate than Duke was last night.
And the Duke loss to North Carolina really kind of helped Clemson out because it gives them a 1.5 lead going into the ACC bye with a game in hand on most of the teams that are behind them. And they go into basically the final stretch drive with really only one game that really concerns you, and that's on the road at Virginia Tech. I know Florida State might concern some people, but I think they're a better team than Florida State, and they've proven that they can win on the road. I think that's something that is very, very important, and they've also proven that they can win on a night when they don't necessarily have a full complement of players. I mean, you mentioned Marquise Reed being kind of sidelined with the flu. He was limited to 23 minutes. Brad Brownell even said it was probably the first time this year that he'd even asked out for a game. So you saw a lot more Clyde Trapp. You saw David Scara execute a back cut for, I think, the first time in his Clemson career. It was very encouraging to see that. And you also have Gabe DeVoe, who is playing on a completely another level right now. Another 25-point performance after what he did against Georgia Tech earlier in the year, tied that mark. And I think Clemson is sitting in a very pretty scenario right now where they have games left that are winnable, and they've got good other resume building wins to serve as a bedrock. And oh, by the way, you get Duke coming into your building a week from Sunday. That
is going to be some ball game if Clemson doesn't stub its toe between now and then.
And that could be the clincher for a game in Charlotte, because if you come into a season with wins over Duke and North Carolina in your building, you're telling the NCAA Tournament Committee, listen, we've got it. We've got it right in here in our building.
You mentioned Gabe DeVoe. My goodness, 25 points last night, 9 of 16 from the floor, 7 of 11 from 3. So if my math is right, over his last 4 games, that makes him 22 of 34 from 3. I think he was 15 of 23. So this would make him 22 of 34 from distance. And you're playing ACC competition. That is good just by yourself.
He's the second Clemson player of all time to have 5+ 3-pointers made in 4 consecutive conference games. And that also includes the one 3-pointer he took basically from the ring finger of the Tiger Paw.
Yeah.
And
which
now,
Brad Brownell chastised him for after the game.
And now if you're Brad Brownell, you're really working on his driving game. Because from now on, every team is going to run him off that 3-point line. And either you have to set a double screen where he comes through and comes out on the other side. They're going to have to do some really inventive screening for him down the stretch.
And now we turn to the Gamecocks. They return home tomorrow to play Florida, a team they beat earlier in the year. And when they won that game, everybody kind of sat up and said, okay, good win, and a couple of home games coming up that looked winnable. Win those games, things are looking good. But what happened was they just sort of saw the air come out of their bubble with the loss to Texas Tech and then the loss to Mississippi State. Tough home losses. Then they go and lose at Texas A&M and Arkansas, and a couple of games that weren't all that competitive. So they're on a 4-game skid now with Florida coming in tomorrow. And they're looking at, if they don't pick it up, they're looking at possibly a 7-game losing streak. If they lose to Florida, then you've got Tennessee on the road, and then, of course, Auburn a week from Saturday in Columbia.
Rough stretch.
It could get very, very ugly for the Gamecocks. They've got to pick it up. You were over there talking to some of the players today, and we'll hear from Silva and maybe Holden. But maybe getting Holden back and healthy some and getting him more minutes will settle that offense down, and they'll have a true point guard who can run that offense and get things going better.
Well, speaking to Corey in particular, he only practiced twice before he played his first contest. I believe it was the Alabama game where he first got in, and really had trouble kind of getting his air underneath him, so to speak, because game speed is a lot different than practice speed. The one thing that I would be encouraged by is the fact that South Carolina is playing its first game against a team that they've beaten on the road, playing their first return engagement in that particular environment. So you do have the confidence of having beaten Florida, but you also beat them when Wes Myers is playing a lot better than he is now. You wonder if he can get back to that form.
Here's the deal, though, guys. When you look at South Carolina, I think South Carolina is more the team that beat Georgia than they're playing now, because they shot 28% but won the ball game. What they're lacking now is they're not playing the defense they were playing earlier in the season.
Via phone number, and we'll take plenty of your phone calls. Let's talk some basketball. We can continue talking recruiting, looking back, looking ahead, and anything else you want to bring up tonight. 800-956-7266, the number. Coming to you from Columbia. Back in a moment.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
We got breaking news.
Oh.
In recruiting.
Oh.
I think this probably brings it to an end, at least for now. Dorian Gerald of Florence, College of the Canyons Junior College. He's a great story. This is a guy that came out of West Florence High School with nothing in recruiting. Nothing.
Nada.
Nothing. Went out to junior college, made himself into the, I guess they say, the #1 junior college defensive end in the country. He has signed with Arkansas. Chose Arkansas over the likes of Louisville, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. South Carolina was involved for a while and then
backed off.
That splittered. Yeah, I don't know what happened. That just came to an end as well. So I guess South Carolina felt they had better players. This is a guy that had some big numbers in junior college, and he'll have a couple of years of eligibility there with the Razorbacks. So South Carolina won't have him playing for them, but they will have to play against him during the season.
You hate to lose a guy to somebody from that standpoint that was in your backyard previously, although they won't see Arkansas.
No, they play Arkansas. Don't they play Arkansas pretty regularly?
No, they just played them for the last time.
Okay, maybe they won't see him.
A&M is their permanent
now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So for whatever reason,
so they won't see him.
At one point, he was very strong on South Carolina.
Unless Arkansas and Chad Morris make their way to Atlanta the same year that the Gamecocks do, which I find.
And he replaces the guy that they lost, who decommitted, who South Carolina thought they had, who went to Tennessee.
Exactly.
True that.
Exactly. All right, 800-956-7266 is our phone number here on Sports Talk. Couple of other notes, and we'll get to your telephone calls as we open things up. Shanahan has a new head football coach. David Morbitzer takes over as the Hawks head coach. He had been their offensive line coach. Also saw recently where Goose Creek hired their coach. He was the defensive coordinator from South Point.
Yes.
So he's going down to Goose Creek.
You see what happened to the guy from Ben Lippen? He went to take the job at Savannah Christian,
right,
and then reneged on them. And Ben Lippen said, "No, we don't want you back either."
Pretty much so, yeah.
It's pretty bad.
He came back to stay at Ben Lippen, and they said,
"No, thanks."
Nope. Ship has sailed.
So
Clemson's Seth Beer won a 55 named the Golden Spikes Award preseason watch list, and I imagine as that list is whittled down, his name will remain on there because he's that good. And the SEC baseball poll came out yesterday, catching up on a couple of things that we missed because we were so busy with other stuff. South Carolina picked 4th in the East by the coaches, behind Florida and Vandy, ahead of Georgia, of course, ahead of Missouri. You still play baseball in Missouri?
I do.
And Tennessee last.
You wouldn't know it by who goes there, though.
In the West, it's Arkansas, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, LSU, Mississippi State, Auburn, Alabama, Florida, the pick to win the championship. Arkansas got a vote. A&M got a vote. The only Gamecock on the preseason All-SEC team is Carlos Cortez. They're going to be – I don't know anything really about what's gone on in the preseason except from what I've read. Hadn't been out there to see them. We'll see plenty of baseball starting next week, but they're going to be better than these preseason predictions because you look at their everyday lineup. I know they've got some questions at pitching, okay? But their everyday lineup, they return their catcher. They return a now sophomore first baseman in Riley Hogan, who did some good things for him when he took over last year. They return their middle infield, or at least they return their shortstop, return to third baseman, who's a veteran. Much of the outfield, if not all, returns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's all about what happens with the arms.
Well, I get that, but I mean, I just think they're going to be a lot better than what people are saying, which is probably good for Mark Kingston. He's probably saying, let them pick us low, let them overlook us, keep the expectations down, and then when they overachieve, he's going to look like a genius.
That is something that you can't measure mentally, especially with a team that's undergoing a transition, and that is not having the yoke of expectations. I think last year when that team had trouble hitting, that yoke just got heavier, heavier, and heavier. And then suddenly they threw their hands up and then went in the tournament when they never do anything and made a run in it.
Here's the issue with college baseball. So much has become offense is coming at a premium because of what they're trying to do with the bats. They're trying to deaden the bats, make them less dangerous, make them more like a true like wood bat scenario, which is a hard thing to kind of overcome when you don't have a team that's a strong hitting team. Now, the problem that South Carolina is going to have is that they don't have defined roles for their Friday, Saturday, and Sunday starters. They have contenders for the closer as well, but
they've got their Friday starter figured out.
That's basically the one guy they've got. And I think that that's something where if you look at from South Carolina's perspective, you have to find out exactly who is filling those roles, and you need to find those out really, really quickly.
Ask Clemson what they did with one ace that year. He ran it to the championship, didn't he?
Well, and Clemson's facing kind of the same situation.
Yeah.
They've got to remake their pitching as well.
But they got a better offense.
You would think, they're shortstop and Beer at first now, and short gives them a very solid, and Williams at catcher gives them a very solid 3-4-5 in the middle of their lineup.
3-4-5, I wouldn't want to face.
And so it begins in college baseball next week, next Friday. USC at home, Clemson at home, baseball at the beach down at Coastal Carolina. We'll have plenty of baseball to talk about moving forward. All right, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Glenn in North Charleston, you're up with us tonight here on Sports Talk. How are you?
How you doing?
Good.
And I hope you all have a blessed evening. And I thought I would bring up the subject that the blind used to have beeper ball a while back, but there needs to be blind sports in Charleston and Columbia. And I heard the Italian team had a blind Italian team, and they play regular baseball. It's like first, second, third base pitcher. They have the defense and everything. And I thought we could bring that down here and train young blind kids on how to play regular baseball. And I think we could put this in the Olympics and, have a world league, different countries playing against one another.
That'd be a wonderful thing. I mean, certainly any kind of activity that you can have out there for those kids, I don't disagree with you. I think it's wonderful. How do they have a little beeper in the baseball or something? A little something that makes sound?
From what I heard, the Italian players just have a little bell on the ball.
Yeah.
Just that's all they got.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe we could form a team down Charleston, Columbia, High Point, get a tournament going and get kids interested, and blind kids, of course, but I guess adults could play too, regular, if they wear a blindfold, if they don't mind that, and take a chance. But I believe blind people could be trained. They used to have soccer in Columbia for the blind, and I think they need to be more emphasis and less discrimination and include blind people and blind kids in sports. Football, I don't know about. I'm working on it, but I think touch football might be a better acquisition for blind people.
Yeah, I think anything that you can do along those lines, if it can be developed, absolutely. Who would be opposed to something like that? Thank you, Glenn. We appreciate the phone call. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, we'll hear coming up from Brad Brownell from Clemson after the Tigers win last night over Pittsburgh. They get their little break now. They don't return to action until what, Thursday?
Wednesday. They play on Valentine's Day.
Oh.
I want to read some of the Twitter response after you kind of stirred the pot last night, calling out the Clemson fans for not coming to the game last night.
That's cool. That's cool. I just said, I think, again, you've only got 9,000 seats to fill. It's an ACC game. Your team is going for its 20th win. You're having your best season in years. I would have thought it would be absolutely a full house for that game.
I also want to prove.
Were the students there? Did they have a big turnout of students?
I mean, it was not.
Yeah, I put some of the blame on that. Where are the students? I mean, you don't get this opportunity around here, as we know. very often.
I just want to prove we're being fair because we're criticizing Clemson when we usually criticize South Carolina for these things.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Friday night from downtown Columbia. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Clemson coming off a win last night impressively over Pitt. South Carolina getting ready to play Florida at home tomorrow afternoon at the Colonial Life Arena, trying to snap a 4-game losing streak. We'll talk more about the Gamecocks and the Tigers coming up in a little bit. Also in the ACC tomorrow, North Carolina at NC State. They're going to have a red out at the PNC Center for that one. Miami at Boston College, Florida State at Notre Dame, Virginia Tech at Virginia. That could be a good one. Sunday, Louisville at Pitt, Wake Forest at Syracuse, and Duke at Georgia Tech. Let's talk about North Carolina and Duke last night. And I actually was caught up in the Celtics and the Wizards last night, so I was watching that. Then it dawned on me that the other game was going on, so I flipped over. I caught it with about 5 minutes to go, and North Carolina was pulling away. And I don't think it's happening for Duke this year with all these freshmen. In fact, I saw John Rothstein tweet after the game that he does not see this as a good Duke team, not as a team that has come together as a Mike Krzyzewski kind of team. He just sees a collection of one-and-dones out there playing, which, can happen a lot. Seldom. I guess it happened at Kentucky. They won a national championship with a bunch of freshmen. But I wonder if this will move Krzyzewski into changing his recruiting philosophy to some degree. Now, you're a head coach like Krzyzewski with his program. You're kind of caught between the rock and the hard place. On the one hand, you don't want to turn down the great talent. But on the other hand, do you constantly want to have a roster that's turning over because everybody leaves after 1 year?
I want to make a drastic I hope this isn't too drastic a comparison. Duke is a more talented version of the team that Clemson played last night, in that when they're on offense, they're largely individual, largely one-on-one oriented. They don't create for each other. They all try to create their own shot, and they don't play any defense. Now, Duke has more talent than Pittsburgh, significantly more talent than Pittsburgh, so that will win you more games. But when you play talented competition, especially on the road, especially in the ACC, you're not going to win a lot.
Well, they're a young team. Their point guard is a freshman, but you can tell he's oozing with talent. But their team doesn't play good team defense. Why? Because their big men rely on the last vestige of defense. They love the shot block. They don't do any positioning. If the guy can't get to the basket, you don't need to block the shot. If you play sound team defense.
Use your feet.
Right now, Krzyzewski cannot get them to play team defense.
And the other part of this, too, the one guy on Duke who you would try to count on for any kind of senior leadership, Grayson Allen, has become an ultimate zero. I don't necessarily find it to be
he looked terrible last night.
I don't find it to be something where I'm feeling sorry for him or them, because I can't stand him or them. So I'm not sobbing for it. But at the same time, the one guy who you tried to count on for any kind of senior leadership has been an absolute zero.
I was just sitting here thinking, the 5 programs in the country that you think of regularly when it comes to one-and-dones, we would say Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Arizona, maybe?
No, Louisville, maybe. Well, Louisville pre-Patino before Patino left.
Well, for sake of argument, throw Arizona in there because they recruit at a high rate and they get those kind of players. Those 5 teams combined so far this year, 30 losses.
It's crazy.
Spread out amongst them. It's not like one's got 10, the others have less. No, it's spread out amongst them. So, it's just with all that talent and with the great coaches at each one of those places, it's just not working. And you wonder as a coach, man, do I risk? Is it worth the risk of this one and done? Because look at how many one and dones does Duke have on its team this year? How many guys are going to up and go to the draft after this year?
3 or 4.
Are we looking at? So you're talking about having to constantly replace and re-recruit at practically every position. And then you hope it kind of comes together in a short amount of time. Occasionally it will, as we saw with Kentucky a few years ago. But I'm making the argument more often than not, it won't. And this year is a prime example. Look at the top teams. The top teams in the RPI as of today: Virginia, Xavier, okay, Villanova,
veteran team.
Yeah, and they recruited a pretty high level, but they don't get a lot of one and dones.
No.
Veteran team, though.
Clemson, veteran team, exactly. Clemson,
veteran team.
and Rhode Island.
Veteran
That's your
team.
top 5.
Well, look at the last couple of championships. North Carolina won last year with a veteran team.
Yes.
Villanova 2 years ago won with a largely veteran team. And the most outstanding player was a 4-year senior in Ryan Archidiakono. Tyus Jones and that Duke team that is before this this mold by Coach Krzyzewski to kind of take more one and dones. And then before that was UConn, who basically made a run through the tournament with Shabazz Napier and all them. So in that reign, there are a lot of people who will look at what is your goal? Is your goal to send guys to the NBA, or is your goal to win?
Well, your goal is to get the best talent you can. But here's the problem with what Kentucky and Duke has run into this year. When they've won, they've had one and dones a little bit, but they sprinkled them with veterans.
Right.
They kept the team together. This time has been a mass exodus. Now, here's the other end of the spectrum.
Well, that's what happened to Kentucky, too.
Yeah, here's the other end of the spectrum, Corn. What is a one and done? Because now, because you've had injuries or whatever, and they've been hot and cold, South Carolina went one and done the other direction, the graduate student.
Right.
So there's one and dones on one end and one and dones on the other. And it's interesting. I think you really have to have a mix, but especially those young guys who are willing to play defense, because a lot of high school kids were told, look, we need you in the game to score. We can't have you fouling. And that means to them, they can't play in your jock defense. So it takes them a year to figure out you got to play defense to win at this level.
And this isn't necessarily pertaining to the schools, but just to the young men who are one and dones. You know, how many of those guys do you think are actually ready to play at the NBA level and contribute right away? Not very many of them.
But the NBA is willing to take them, pay the money, and then try and develop them, thinking they've got a guy for the future, and the player wants to get in there early because he's got the agent telling him, you go in now and you get the your rookie contract, get that behind you, things go well, your second contract, you'll still be very young, you'll make a big contract, and then for your third contract, you'll still be young.
But how many of those guys? How many of those guys are able to actually get a second contract, though? That's the thing. A lot of those guys aren't. I mean, a lot of those guys are having to go play in Europe.
Look at a guy like Greg Monroe. Okay, he was a he was a one and done after Georgetown, right? Didn't he go 1 year to Georgetown?
I think he did.
I believe he was just signed by the Celtics. I mean, he's 27 years old, and he's got a lot of years behind him, but he's already into like maybe his second or third NBA contract after a year at Georgetown. I think he was a one and done at Georgetown.
But it can go the other way. Bill Walker was a two and done,
right?
And he ended up he's in the Turkish basketball league now,
right? Well, I mean, look, you can find examples both ways. I personally,
don't like the rule.
Would like the rule. I'd like the baseball rule. I think the baseball rule is the best rule out there. I wish they would go to that. You know, if you're a high school kid and you're ready to go the NBA, then go. Mm-hmm. You come to college. It's a 3-year commitment. Let's get to where we can get college basketball back to where. Well, I mean, for most teams, it's like this. You build that relationship between your fan base and the player because you're going to be there long enough. Just those few exceptions where you have the constant turnover of the one and dones. So we're not talking about the majority of college basketball. We're talking about a few. I'd like to see it across the board, however, so that we can just kind of take that element out of the formula.
I would think it's rare to find a guy who's ready for the NBA. Because, see, I'm always of the opinion that nobody's ready until you come in there and start to play.
Problem is,
some are exceptional, like a Magic Johnson, who was a 35-year-old player when he walked into the room at the age of 19. You're not going to find those kind of guys.
Problem is the NCAA and the NBA keep passing this off on each other. They both have to collaborate and come up with a system that works for all involved.
Absolutely. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Back with you, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Going to hear from Brad Brownell in just a moment. A couple of notes from USC baseball from David Kleininger, Charleston Post and Courier, out at Gamecock practice this afternoon, I guess. Shane Roberts has a back injury. He will redshirt. This is coming from Mark Kingston, who also says Eddie DeMurias will be the Gamecocks closer. The weekend rotation will be Hill on Friday, Morris on Saturday, and one of the Chapmans. I don't know the roster yet. One of the Chapmans on Sunday.
One of the Chapmans.
One of the Chapmans. Take your choice. One of the Chapmans. And, of course, everything will be open for evaluation as the preseason moves along. So that is coming out of Mark Kingston today from USC. Gamecocks open up their season next Friday. College baseball right around the corner, and looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a very interesting year with, of course, Gamecocks Tigers, Holbrook down at the College of Charleston. Winthrop has a very good team this year. New coach, new excitement down at the Citadel. So college baseball will be here starting on Friday. But let's stay with basketball, because right now you go by the two analysts that we watch in terms of the brackets, Jerry Palms and Joe Lenardi. Lenardi still has Clemson as a 3. He's got Clemson now in Wichita, so he's moving Clemson closer to Charlotte. He did the same thing
Joe.
with the Gamecocks last year. He's got them in Wichita now, and that's good. But the Tigers keep winning. They'll get closer to Charlotte, and I think the committee will put them there as long as they don't stumble down the stretch. But Brad Brownell has just got to be feeling really good about his team after last night's win.
He does. You know, when we went off the air on during yesterday's show, it was a little precarious, a 10-point lead for a team that had only won 8 games on the season. But Brad rear end to the locker room, and they came out in the second half at a 24-6 run at one point, and they got the game over early.
Disciplined performance by our guys. I was really pleased with the way we played. Thought we showed very good maturity, and in our preparation, we had very good days of practice leading in, and I thought it made a difference. I really thought our guys did what we wanted to do defensively, and offensively, I thought we shared the ball, had very good assist turnover numbers, and executed against different defenses, man and zone, and some zone press, and certainly when we shot it well again. That helps our team a lot. So just a good disciplined performance in preparation during the week and the performance today.
Brad, what's it mean to get to 20 wins this early?
That's great. Obviously it's hard to do this, and you got to play well both in the league and the non-league to get to 20. And just proud of our guys for how much they've poured into it, not just during the season, but this summer and fall, and guys have really worked hard and given everything they've had. And, we've played very good basketball for a long period now. And obviously we have a extremely difficult next couple of weeks, but just super proud of our guys and what they've been able to do. 20 wins in 24 games is excellent basketball.
You kind of mixed and matched a little bit in the first half with the lineups. How much of that was to kind of prepare you for the stretch drive, see what works, and what did you see that worked?
Well, Marquise Reed has the flu. It's ironic. I was asked about it on the radio show, I think, Monday, and he was fine. And he was fine, I don't even know what day it is, Tuesday. And then all of a sudden, Wednesday morning, first thing in the morning, I get a text from my trainer that Marquise got a fever of about 103, and we'll see what happens. And obviously he was down for the count that whole day, and thankfully the fever went away that day, and they got on it right away and pumped him full of some fluids. And the next morning, he woke up and he felt fine, which was today, or better. But and so I asked him, do you want to do it? And he said, yeah. And so we just, played him at times. He asked to come out, which that might be the first time he's done that this year. But, he obviously wasn't full strength. So Clyde knew going in that we didn't know if he was going to play or not. So Clyde would have probably started if Marquise didn't. And so we knew Clyde was ready to go for bigger minutes. And, as we built a little bit of a lead, we played a few more guys, a few more minutes. But, I really wanted to play our older guys a good bit because we don't play for a while. And I really just wanted them to continue to play together and be out there for a little bit.
How crazy is this stretch Gabe is on right now?
Yeah, I mean, he's playing at an unbelievably high level, just shooting the ball with a lot of confidence, but he puts in a lot of work. He shoots extra. He's one of the first guys, if not the first guy to the gym. Been that way all through fall shooting when we come in, 3 or 4 mornings a week as a team and shoot. And, you're happy for guys on your team and in your program that develop. And this is what you want for them in the end of their careers, is to be playing their best basketball and to be enjoying it. And he certainly is doing both.
All right, Brad Brownell, following the Tigers' win last night over Pittsburgh. They're off until Wednesday, and so they finally get another break. Actually, they've had a little bit of a break, had a break this past week, gave them a chance to kind of get their legs back under them, and now they get another break coming off that win last night. They can celebrate their 20th victory for a little while, but then they get ready to go down to Tallahassee to play Florida State, 7 o'clock on Valentine's night. And then Duke comes to Littlejohn Sunday at 1 o'clock, then up to Virginia Tech. So that's a pretty good, tough little stretch right there. Make it through that stretch undefeated or 2-1. You got to like their chances for having that very high seed for the tournament moving forward. Because if they finish the regular season, no matter what happens in the ACC tournament, if they can finish their regular season, let's say second in the ACC, the tournament, the committee's not going to punish them for going to the ACC tournament and say maybe not getting to the semifinals, maybe losing in the quarterfinals if that were to happen. But they're good enough to go to Brooklyn and win a couple of games there.
Well, the thing about finishing, whether it's second or third, is that keeps you away from Virginia as long as possible, at least until the ACC tournament final. And you would think that, especially if they beat Duke, that would give them wins over basically everybody that they could possibly see, because, the loss to NC State, you already have a win over them. I mean, it's to me, if you've proven that you could beat everybody inside the conference, whether it's on a neutral floor, a road floor, or a home floor, I think that just proves more of kind of that bedrock of your resume, especially if you can go a couple of days in Brooklyn. And also, if you get in that top 2, it's double bye. So.
And it will be what you're looking for in the tournament or down the stretch here is someone has to be able to have the mental fortitude to seduce Virginia in the periods of running the basketball, which no one has been able to do. Florida State came the closest the other night, and they almost had them. Almost
still held them to 55 points.
And still, Virginia in that second half, seduced Florida State on their home floor to play the showdown. And that's what did them in.
Well, the thing about beating Virginia is you have to make them work defensively. That's the big issue.
Which the only team has done is West Virginia.
And that's the other part of that, is that whether or not you're scoring early in the shot clock or late in the shot clock, you have to make them work. It's a lot about ball reversal. It's a lot about trying to penetrate and drive and kick. And I think Clemson, their biggest problem was that they fell way too in love with their own three-point shot, and they were settling for all these things 30 feet away from the hoop, and they were just they weren't falling.
Well, I tell you, it's just been intriguing because we all knew that Brad Brownell going into this season was a make or break. Even though Radakovich extended his contract,
they did that for recruiting.
Yeah, even though he extended the contract for years after last year, we all knew going into the season that they had to have a breakthrough NCAA kind of year, and they did just that. When you kind of least suspect it, but Frank Martin made a good comment back when they played, and that is the age of those guards and the age of that team overall, it makes a difference. And I guess we tend not to see that when we're talking about matchups and breakdowns. We tend to overlook the veteran nature of guys playing together 2 or 3 years and what it means.
Especially at the guard position in college basketball.
Yeah, and Clemson's got that this year. Okay, top of the hour, we'll have recruiting coming up for you and a whole bunch more.